Again, welcome everyone. Welcome to Share Your Micro-Credentials. Maybe just a little bit about the title and where I came up with this title. I guess I just got started thinking about how over the last year, everything I do or everywhere I go, someone stops me and asks me lots of questions, whether I'm trying to get into Shoppers Drug Mart or, even if I was a long time ago trying to travel somewhere, I was bombarded with questions. Have you been here? Have you been there? Do you have any symptoms? Do you have any of this, any of that? And I thought everywhere I go, people are asking me to share my credentials, basically. I go to an airport, someone wants to see my passport. I apply for a job, someone wants to see my resume. So it's kind of important that we are able to share somewhat, sometimes personal information about ourselves. And that includes sharing information about the sorts of things we know and the sorts of things that we can do. And so one of the great things that I find about micro-credentials is how easy it is to share with someone your credentials, how easy it is to let someone know what it is you're able to do, or how easy it is to let someone know the skill set that you possess as a result of taking certain micro-credentials. So as we go through this little journey about what micro-credentials are and how they started at Seneca and what my role is in all of that and where we're hoping to take this at Seneca, the theme that's going to run throughout, I guess, is just the ability to share your knowledge, your skill set, and be able to share to others what you can do. And that's really important. I've just even been thinking about job interviews I've done recently, including for Seneca College. And that was really important. I obviously had a resume. I obviously had some transcripts, but the person doing the hiring still didn't really know what I was able to do, even with having access to my resume and having access to my transcripts. They said, that's all great. I can see that you have a degree in this, this, and that. I can see that you've worked here and you've worked there, but I don't really know what you can do. So micro-credentials are just a really fantastic way to be able to share that information about what you can do. I see that there was a link in the chat box just posted, and we're going to need that later. We don't need it now, so it's up to you whether you decide to click on it now. But we definitely won't need it for a little while. So I'll leave that up to you whether you try to have that open in another window and just have it sitting there for now. But if you want to just wait, because I'll give you that opportunity in a little while when we stop to take a break. I'll just say, while you're gone for the next 10 minutes, just make sure you get that file opened. So yeah, let's continue along this micro-credential journey. My name is Todd Malarczuk, and I am currently employed on a part-time basis at Seneca College through the Teaching and Learning Center. But I was hired to be their competency-based education person. That's kind of a fancy title for someone that was helping to get the school up and running in the way of micro-credentials. So everyone's, maybe everyone can even just, there's not too many of us, so it might be awesome if everyone wants to put in the chat box, maybe like a number from 1 to 5, where 1 is, I've only heard of micro-credentials, but have no idea what they are, all the way up to 5, which would be, you could come sit in my chair right now and do this presentation.
I like the use of the 0.5.
Very precise. Ooh, Isabella. Gonna let you, you can swap out every now and then. And obviously anyone who has anything to add to this conversation, please feel free to, I don't know if there's a hand raise in here or put it in the chat box. If there are things that you can lend that's going to help everyone else, do not feel like you're stepping on my toes here, because we're all in this together. So especially some of you putting 5s and 3.5s and 4s up here. I'm not really the expert, Isabella. I've been working with this for about a year now, and I have learned a lot in this year, but I'm far from an expert. So really, this is about sharing with everyone here some of the things I've learned over the last year. So I'd love to learn more too about what other people know. So, all right. That said, thank you. I see we're mostly, none of us are really brand new into this. Some of us know something a little bit here and there about micro-credentials. So that's awesome. Some of the things I share then maybe a little, you might say, I already know this, but we'll see where we go. All right. Okay. Here's kind of what we're going to do today. Yes, there will be a bit of storytelling at the start. Through that story, we will get a little bit into what is a micro-credential, how are they working at Seneca, what's going on at Seneca, what are some other things that are a little bigger than micro-credentials. You'll get a chance to create your own micro-credential. We'll have some questions, and then we will go have lunch. Okay, you know that how we usually start most things like this about, oh, tell me a little bit about yourself. Let's share things about ourselves. Really tough to do on a Zoom call. So I just thought even maybe for now, if you just put into the chat box, I'd love to know where you're coming from. Where are you in this wonderful province today? It's kind of neat now because of the power of virtual meets. We're able to kind of all come together at a meeting, even though we could be all in completely different places. And I love doing this and then seeing who's the farthest away. I happen to be broadcasting live from the booming metropolis of Mount Hope, Ontario. Is Vaughan really the COVID hotspot? I see a lot of basic GTA areas. Ooh, we got some Belleville. That might win as the farthest. Carrie, you might win the prize. Scugog Township near Port Perry. Yeah, I'm an Oshawa boy. I know where Port Perry is. Many
Port Hope. Let me see.
Port Hope, Port Perry, Scugog. I think Belleville's going to win as being the farthest, though. I don't know where.
Is Mount Hope just north of Newmarket?
No, Mount Hope is actually just south of Hamilton.
It's okay. So they have a lot of them.
Yeah, it's in between Hamilton and Caledonia. I'd love to know where. What did I see there? Is it Sterling? Sterling, Ontario? Neil, where's Sterling, Ontario? Pretty close, Carrie. North of Belleville. Ooh, okay. Is it blame it on the Vaughan Mills Mall? Huh, interesting. Okay, so yeah, pretty much GTA. Belleville gets a little bit outside the GTA. I like to think that Hamilton is not part of the GTA, but I think in today's world, with all the urban sprawl going on, it kind of is. So thank you for sharing that. Guess it makes sense considering most people are probably employed at Seneca College, maybe Humber College, and I saw a couple other colleges out there joining us today. So welcome to people from wherever it is that you're coming from. Kind of awesome that we can all get together and do something like this from the comfort of our home or wherever we may happen to be. All right, so I thought I'd start off because depending on when you started hearing about micro-credentials and depending how deeply you've heard about micro-credentials, you may have experienced something to what I've experienced over the last year. And really, I experience this anytime something new comes into education. we kind of all begin and we're introduced to something new, and we're going to call that the technology trigger. And when that happens, typically people get very excited and everyone tries jumping on board this bandwagon. And it was no different for me, at least with micro-credentials. About a year ago, when I was brought into Seneca, that seemed to happen where as soon as I started, it was all the rage almost. People were talking about it. Not everyone knew what it was, but there was this, what we call badge craziness. What are these badges? How do I give badges? How can I give a badge? I want a badge. And there was just a lot of badge craziness. And again, like any new technology, that kind of typically happens. People start hearing about it. It becomes a buzzword. Your bosses, my bosses, everyone wants to jump on somehow and make this thing happen. But what can happen when that starts to begin is things get too crazy too quickly. And you might not have experienced this, but I've definitely experienced this, where everyone wanting to get their hands into this new thing, but no one really knowing how or how to begin. Or so I got a little badge crazy. And again, that can happen with any new technology or any new thing that's brought into the world of education. And what happens after that, we typically then start getting very tired and things are moving too quickly. Nobody really has a sense of how to do things properly. All we know is there's this new stuff that people want us to be doing, but we don't really know how to be doing it. And we actually start to get a bit weary of the whole thing. We haven't been properly trained in areas, or someone's told me they want me to create a micro-credential, but I don't feel confident in even creating a micro-credential. So we have this badge weariness. But eventually, we strive to get up this slope of enlightenment to this area that I'm calling badge savvy. And again, like I said, we can replace this with any technology. I'm sure many of you are already thinking of things where new bandwagons have come through the education train station, and everyone tries jumping on. You experience this bit of craziness. You eventually get tired of the whole thing. But with the proper supports in place, we can make it kind of up that slope of enlightenment and end up where we want to be, which is at what is called the plateau of productivity. And these are definitely not my terms here along the bottom. This is all adapted. But yeah, I think we can all kind of probably experience something along those lines. For me, my background before I came to Seneca College was in secondary education. I was a math teacher in high school for close to 20 years. And for me, this was that big technology that came along maybe about, I'm trying to think now, it had to have been at least 10 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago, the smartboard came along. Okay, and this was supposed to revolutionize what I did in my classroom. And everyone wanted a smartboard. In fact, there were fights in the hallways about how come you got a smartboard in your classroom and I don't have a smartboard in my classroom. Okay? And I experienced all of those emotions of, I had so much coming at me at once, no training on how to use a smartboard. So I ended up becoming weary of the whole thing and eventually made it to where I needed to make it to, but there was a lot of support needed. That's funny that Arushi put that in the chat box. Yeah. So anyway, that's my little analogy. Does anyone else have something that just jumped out at you with the minute I showed that first graph, where something was just seemed to be all the rage at the moment, and then things just spiraled out of control, and eventually maybe you made it somewhere that you were hoping to make it to? Does anyone have an example of anything like that, where kind of a big bandwagon rolled through and everyone tried jumping on that they wanted to share? iPads in schools. Yeah, that was probably, I can imagine, a big thing. Did that even happen in the post-secondary world? I know it happened in the secondary world. Costa, is it? Do you want to expand on that a little bit? You don't need to. If you wanted to turn your mic on, though, you could.
Yeah, in our department, we had about 75 iPads, and we used them pretty actively for, I would say, about 3 or 4 years. But then just with time and with sessional faculty coming and going, a lot of the interest just kind of dwindled. And then I guess with the rise of cloud tools like Google Drive, people kind of just figured, well, instead of signing out iPads and having to, be responsible for 20 iPads and having to return them and whatever, I'd rather just work with what's already in the classroom, right? So, and also the other thing is everybody's got a smartphone in their pocket now. So pretty much most of what we wanted to do, we can have students do with that smartphone. And if we need to connect, we can just use the big screen at the front of the room for people to show things or do surveys or whatnot. So they kind of just fizzled out. Yeah, they were really, really hot for a while, but with everybody having a smartphone in their pocket, we just kind of found that it was less convenient,
Right. Yeah, makes total sense. Great. Thanks for sharing, Costa. So what we want to avoid when something like this happens, or at least what we try to avoid, is that what Costa just talked about there is that kind of drop off. Now, sometimes the drop off is necessary because maybe it was not the most well-conceived plan to begin with. And sometimes it just drops off because that's the nature of technology. But our goal is to get to that sustainability level with any kind of new technology or new implementation. And that is hopefully why the leadership at Seneca has been very careful about moving forward with micro-credentials, has made it a point to hire people like me, which I'm very thankful for, to have the employment, but to try to see this through, I guess, the right way so that we don't experience this drop off. So we'll see. If it does drop off, I'm not saying it's all my fault, though. Okay. But yeah, that's where we're trying to go. And so this little story I'm going to start with is kind of all about how we're trying to get to that level of sustainability. And I was brought into Seneca really to oversee micro-credentials so that I could help to alleviate some of that craziness as people try getting started with their own micro-credentials. My goal, as I like to say, is just to make sure everyone is doing the same thing when it comes to micro-credentials. Because right now, micro-credentials are a bit of the Wild West in education. Depending on what school you're at or what institution you're at, you probably are doing things a little bit differently. In fact, it's that common story that if you ask 20 people from 20 different academic institutions what a micro-credential is, you'll get 20 different answers typically. Varying degree of differences and a lot of similarity and overlap, but you'll still get different answers about the way the schools are running their micro-credential program. So that's kind of my goal, is at least to make sure everyone at Seneca is on the same page and is on the same train track when it comes to developing, offering, and awarding micro-credentials and the accompanying digital badges. Okay. So I thought it might be good just for those of you that, depending on where you're coming from in your micro-credential background, maybe just to talk a little bit about micro-credentials at Seneca, but really through the lens of how is a micro-credential different than a traditional course. So might also be a great time right now, just really quickly in the chat box, is to put what your role is at the institution that you work at. So I have a little bit of a sense of, are most of us instructors? Are we more administration? Where's our... So basically, so far, it looks like everyone is on the instruction side of things. All right. Yes. So everyone's on the instruction side of things. So it's great. So a nice little filter to have here as we continue about what are micro-credentials is to kind of think of it as how are they different than a traditional course that you would develop, offer, and run at a college. That seems to be a great starting point for this. Okay. When you sit down to plan a course at a college, I'm not exactly sure what kind of guidelines you have to follow, but I do know what kind of guidelines you have to follow when you sit down to plan a micro-credential course. Okay, and here are some of the big kind of pillars of micro-credentials that regardless of what you're creating, regardless of what the content is, these things must be adhered to in some way, shape, or form. So a micro-credential is a little bit different than a traditional course because it's all very skill-based, skill and competency-based, we'd like to say. Whereas a course, a typical course anyway, can have a lot of theory and knowledge in it, and a lot of content knowledge. A micro-credential does not have a lot of that stuff. It's got a lot of skill and competency teaching. So I'm going to teach you how to do this. I want you to be able to skate backwards, for example. That's a skill. It's not necessarily, sticking with that skating analogy, it's not necessarily about the history of skating and who the first person was to design the skate, and which, you know, a typical course could definitely have all kinds of stuff like that, the theory of skating, different techniques for skating. This is just, I'm going to teach you the skill of how to skate backwards. So it's very skill and competency based. It's very personalized, and this is something that makes it very different than a traditional course. A traditional course in a college or university is kind of part of a package of a whole bunch of courses. And although there's some flexibility in what courses you take, you really have a set number of courses that you need to take to earn your diploma. And there's not a lot of wiggle room in there. Like, to earn your diploma in discipline X, there is a number of courses that you are required to take. Micro-credentials are a little more personalized because it's kind of like just a menu of a whole bunch of different courses, but you just have to take the ones that you want. You don't need to take all the other courses that go along in a typical diploma program. And so it's very personalized from that respect. It's also very personalized in time, in terms of a time commitment and time requirements. Again, traditional courses tend to be, you come to class on Mondays at 7 p.m., for example, whereas micro-credentials are, you do the work when you can do the work, and you learn the skills the way you can learn the skills when you're able to. Absolutely. Someone's asking if they can take a screenshot of anything. This is being recorded. This is wide open for anyone. So please take screenshots. Please ask questions. Please ask for the presentation afterwards, whatever you need to do, or send me an email and I can help you out anywhere I can. So again, I was just saying they're kind of very personalized in terms of a time perspective. They're meant to recognize people that are already currently working and not full-time students, people that might have families that they're also trying to raise at the same time, people who are just looking to either reskill or upskill and need that flexibility. They just can't take, 3 months off of work to go take a course somewhere at a college, or, take 2 years off of work to go pursue a diploma program. So they get to kind of pick and choose from a menu, where are the skills and what are the skills that I want to go learn how to master. Okay, so they're very personalized. They're still very much quality assured. So Seneca still stands behind everything, that every micro-credential that's created, and it's got Seneca's brand on it. And anyone who earns the micro-credential at the end of the day is still going to have something from Seneca that's very similar to a diploma. It's just a lot smaller than a diploma. Yeah, I see lots of questions there coming up. How do you post on social media? I'm happy to answer those, definitely questions like that a bit later. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Something else that's a little cool about micro-credentials is we say that they're stackable, which really just means if you have more than one micro-credential, you can kind of pile them on top of each other to create a bigger credential. Kind of like how you can pile 8 full courses on top of each other to earn maybe like a post-grad certificate in college. You can put other micro-credentials together to earn bigger credentials, basically. Someone just asked the question about how do you post them on social media or social networking sites. They're very shareable. When's the last time you went to try to get one of your transcripts from a university? Anyone ever done that recently? I know I just had to apply for this job here. Yeah, that's correct. About the milestone badge there, someone's posting. But you can imagine if anyone's ever tried to get their transcript recently, it wasn't easy. I mean, I couldn't even remember what my student number was. I did my degree so long ago to get my transcript. Micro-credentials are very shareable, and I'll get into that a little bit later, how just on a simple click of a button, anyone can click on a micro-credential or on a digital badge and access whatever it is they want to access. Okay. Another big one is there cannot be a micro-credential if it is not industry endorsed. And what that means is there are industry partners associated with the course who are vouching for the material in that course. And in many cases, even saying, these are the people we will hire is the people who have these sorts of micro-credentials. This is the skill set that we are lacking. This is where we see gaps in the industry and the workforce. So industry very much stands behind the micro-credential, which at the end of the day is what gives the micro-credential its value. It's almost pointless having a digital badge if no one's going to value that digital badge. And so we need to make sure that there are industries that are willing to say, yes, we will value people who have this digital badge or who have the skill set contained within the digital badge. Someone's just saying that in an attempt to access transcripts, some of the schools sent you micro-credentials and you're not sure why. That's very interesting. Yes, someone mentioning there needs to be a common currency that is recognized internationally. So micro-credentials are recognized internationally because there is a bit of an international governing body called the Open Badge. I don't remember if it's like the Open Badge organization or, but there are some guidelines that all digital badges must fall under, which make them in many cases very internationally recognized and transferable across borders. Okay. I think it's interesting that you use the word currency as well there, Costa, because that's kind of one of my taglines is micro-credentials are really meant to increase somebody's occupational currency. That's something that I heard somewhere at some point, and it really resonated with me and stuck with me. That's what we're trying to do here by earning micro-credentials, at least from a student perspective. We're trying to earn them to increase our occupational currency. We just want to be able to make it easier to get a job here. All right. Okay. Like I said, if you ask 20 people from 20 different institutions what a micro-credential is, you'll get 20 different responses. Well, this is the response you'd get from me. And even my definition changes from time to time. You can see when I wrote this definition, that's literally like 2 days ago. That's what I came up with. obviously I've given this lots of thought and it's changed from time to time, but as of Sunday, February 27th, 2021, there's how I define a micro-credential. I'll just give you a second to read it. So there's a lot in there, a couple of things that I'll highlight. And then if anyone has anything to add to this, please do. Good thing, nice question. Are micro-credentials always academic? No, there can be any skill set. Just to give you an example of that, right now there's a lot of micro-credentials running at Seneca College for the manufacturing industry. When the automotive sector took a big hit a few years ago, namely in Oshawa, Ontario, where the General Motors plant is, a lot of people lost their jobs and a lot of people were left with a lot of experience in the manufacturing industry, but maybe were missing quite a few essential skills because, you know, as time goes on, new skills become important. And these people had been working in an auto factory for the last 20 years. When they lost their jobs, they needed an opportunity to reskill and in a lot of cases upskill a lot of those applied skills that they would have had from their job, like the ability to use, you know, like a measuring tool, just as something, for example. There had become a lot of different, you know, technology had changed enough that even the measuring tools used in certain industry had changed. So these people were given the chance to upskill or reskill, and we'll see a little bit more about that program in a minute, like not much about it, but so they don't have to be purely academic. They're very skill-based, which, and I guess in all cases is always kind of applied. So they're probably even more applied than they are academic at any time. But yeah, you can see here some of the key features. They're a short burst of learning. They're generally, at least the ones I've been working on, somewhere between 12 and 24 hours in length. The course would be, although I've seen them as short as 6 hours and I've seen them as long as like 32 hours. I think as soon as we start getting too long, like approaching the length of a regular course, which I believe might be in the high 40 hours at Seneca, and I would imagine that's kind of standard across the province in terms of college courses. We don't want to make them close to the length of a college course because then they're not really any different than a traditional college course. This is all about going in and getting that quick fix of the skills that are needed, learn the quick skills. So it's a short burst of learning. Again, they're very skill and competency based, not knowledge based. And students who take a micro-credential will need to demonstrate that they've acquired those skills. They need to be able to demonstrate it, not just write down on a piece of paper that you've memorized some knowledge. Okay, so we definitely need a performance-based assessment. Keeping an eye on the questions here. Does the college cap the number of people who can participate in a micro-credential? Absolutely, just like anything else that a college would run, there has to be some consideration of what's the maximum number of students that makes sense for this micro-credential. Depending on the micro-credential, I could see it being able to be very large in some cases, but at other times I could see it being very small. Again, I can only speak from Seneca's perspective. I think the biggest one we've run so far for students is about 45 students were in it. And the smallest one I've seen run had 5 students in it. Okay, I'm not going to read all this, but if you want to take a minute and if you have any questions or comments, please do. Feel free to let me know that you'd like to speak to as opposed to chatting in a chat box, because can definitely be a little more effective hearing people's voices and hearing what they have to say. But just take a second, read through. These are kind of some of the big differences I see between a traditional course and a micro-credential. All right, Costa, go ahead.
Hi, Todd. So my question is, generally speaking, it would be a series of micro-credentials that add up to a digital badge? So a digital badge is usually a collection of micro-credentials. They're not synonymous, basically?
The digital badge is just what you receive for one single micro-credential.
Oh, okay.
Right. Now, there is the opportunity, as you just kind of mentioned, to what we call combine or stack a series of digital badges if they kind of are all related to each other. I sometimes use, I guess, because I'm using Microsoft PowerPoint here for this presentation. So let's just pretend I wanted to go take a micro-credential on PowerPoint. I guess realistically that could be broken into maybe a series of micro-credentials where one is like the basics of Microsoft PowerPoint. One is another micro-credential could be, strategies for intermediate users of Microsoft PowerPoint. And then there's a third micro-credential called, tools and tips for experts, or, advanced strategies in Microsoft PowerPoint. If there was enough material for each of those three, they could conceivably be three separate micro-credentials, but someone could take all three of them and then end up with like kind of a bigger badge saying that they're now Microsoft PowerPoint certified, for example. But at the same time, someone could just choose to take one of those three micro-credentials or two of the three micro-credentials. They could say, I'm already pretty good with the basic skills. I just need to know the intermediate skills or the advanced skills. Whereas someone else could say, I already know the beginner and the intermediate. I just want to jump right into the advanced skills micro-credential. You're welcome. Micro-credentials sound like, yes, definitely very, again, as I said, it's kind of the Wild West right now, but I would think when all the dust settles is that all of the micro-credentials at Seneca will eventually funnel through continuing education. Each school within the college will be responsible for developing, creating micro-credentials, offering them to students, but that kind of offering and registration will come through continuing education, even though it's associated with another school in the college. Okay, so student takes micro-credential. Maybe they take a single micro-credential on, again, just for an example's sake, Microsoft PowerPoint. The basics of Microsoft PowerPoint. That's the micro-credential they take. They do their 15-hour course, learning about different skills. By the end of that micro-credential, they're now able to select different layouts for their presentation. Maybe that's one of the skills they learned. They're able to add text to any of their Microsoft PowerPoint presentations. And, they're able to move things. Anyway, whatever those skills would be for the basics of PowerPoint. They've now mastered all those skills. They have done some sort of a final performance-based task. Maybe they've had to create their own presentation to show off these new skills. And now they have earned their digital badge. Here's what it looks like. So we can see there's a generic badge right there in the middle. There's what all badges at Seneca College look like. That white ribbon that we're looking at, that's where the title would go in there. So like basics of PowerPoint, or, you know, PowerPoint part 1, or whatever it is we decided to name it. So all digital badges at Seneca look like that. And then there's an example of one that has been created and is ready to be awarded once the students finish the course. So students have just begun registering for this micro-credential in something called digital process automation. And when they complete the course, and it comes time for the instructor or professor of the course to award the badges, here's what they would award to the students. Is the students would basically end up receiving through their email this badge. And this badge is now theirs. How long is too long to apply for the digital badge from the student? Like for a student, like what if they don't apply for it and it's been a year since the course ended? Is that kind of what you're asking, Andrea? Yeah, so again, that's just like anything else. That's between instructor, students. You know, it's okay for the instructor to say, just to let you know that by April 30th, if you haven't applied for this badge, you're going to lose that opportunity. I can't give you the next 4 years to work on this one PowerPoint presentation. So please, here's the timelines I expect. Again, keeping in mind that we're trying to be flexible. Yes, so that's great. So great question. How can an employer verify a candidate achieved the badge legitimately? So there's a whole mechanism in place, and that's not the point of today's presentation, which makes sure that once the professor or instructor for the course has agreed that the students have mastered the skills and demonstrated mastery of those skills, there's a whole mechanism in place to make sure that this digital badge gets to the student. And when I say it gets to the student, it's stored in an external website for them. There's kind of like a warehouse of stored where they actually have what are called digital lockers or digital backpacks. And anyone can get an account at one of these warehouses of badges and store the digital badges that you're earning. So a student can't get their hands on a digital badge unless the instructor or the professor has basically signed off saying that they're able to get the badge. Okay. As I say on the left-hand side, one of the great things is that once a student posts this digital badge somewhere, like on their digital resume or on their LinkedIn account or on their curriculum vitae or as the signature on their email, you can just attach this right to the signature of your email. When someone clicks on this digital badge, here's what comes up on their screen. So wherever that digital badge was displayed, anyone who clicks on it, it will pull up a screen that looks like this. Which basically just gives the person all the relevant information about the course that was taken in order to earn that digital badge or that micro-credential. So we can see the first thing that the employer will see if they click on the digital badge is kind of the list of the skills that were learned in this micro-credential. So it's basically, here's what you learned how to do by taking this micro-credential. Okay. Can it be hacked? I guess like anything, probably, maybe someone can hack into these systems, just like if they can, you know, hack into the NASA accounts, I guess people can hack into anything. That's right. And I agree. Someone's just saying, like, we do have to be very careful. But it's like anything. Someone could hack into the registrar's office and change people's marks on their transcripts if they really wanted to. Right? This is all going through the school. There's no badges in much the way you as a professor or an instructor would award someone a credit for finishing your course and give them a mark for finishing your course. It's the same thing. You would need to make sure that the student really was able to demonstrate these skills. And that's up to you and your professional judgment how you do that. Okay. I like it because as an employer or as someone out there looking to see, I don't have to ask you anymore, well, what can you, that's great that you have a degree in business, or that's awesome that you have a diploma in, you know, applied psychology, but what can you do? And so this is giving a little bit about what the person is now able to do as a result of taking this micro-credential. Yeah, I'll get to that question in a second, Costa. Just let me finish up the screen. So you see the first thing there that someone would see when they click on a digital badge is that list of skills and competencies. The second thing is a very brief description about what the student had to do in order to earn the micro-credential. So like, what did they have to provide as evidence that they had the skills? And this person had to convert data into a format usable by modern organization and fully automate the tasks involved. So I don't know what that means, and that's not my job to know what that means, but the people who created this micro-credential knows what that means. And the people in the industry who are supporting this micro-credential very much know what that means. That's what they want their employees to be able to do, basically, in their jobs. Yes, absolutely. If you need to turn your mic on at some point too. Someone had a question now. Totally different question about the employee side of things. Go ahead. Costa.
Hi there, it's me again. I find this discussion fascinating. By the way, this is a great session. I'm glad I joined this one.
Well, I'm very glad you joined as well, Costa.
And then I thought of another question that comes after that. But first, okay, so let's say you graduated, you have a bunch of credentials, you're taking some micro credentials online. Maybe Seneca's offering some, maybe Humber's offering others, maybe some other private, college is offering others. What happens when you have overlap? What happens when you have a certain micro credential which contains competencies A, B, and C, and then you take another credential which contains competencies C, D, and E? You have a little bit of overlap there. Is there a way to say, I kind of have a little bit of this from here and a little bit, and if I put it all together, I think I have the whole, it's kind of like a Frankenstein kind of approach. Like, do you see that being a problem?
Well, I guess potentially anything can be a problem. And I guess it's how big does that problem get? If it's one or two students. One thing that's kind of interesting about a micro-credential, if you saw a micro-credential being offered somewhere at any institution for that matter, I don't know how other schools are doing it right now, but for sure at Seneca, you don't actually, like, very technically, you don't actually have to attend the class or do any of the work. Because if you already have all of those skills, let's say, you can apply for the micro-credential, show the instructor, professor that you already have all of those skills, and they can award you the micro-credential. Remember, the digital badge is just recognition, basically, that you do have those skills. So, which is exactly what makes these very personalized. So if you already happen to have some skills for a particular micro-credential because you took a course on some of that stuff somewhere else, that's awesome. Like, register for this new micro-credential, only absorb the information that's relevant to you, that's going to increase your skill set, and then, do the final project and earn the micro-credential. Yeah, and there's been lots of talk about PLAR going on within institutions right now. And that's mostly for, and we're not going to get in this today, and I don't even know if I want to open up this can of worms, but I'm going to anyway. That's mostly for when we start talking about some micro-credentials at Seneca can be used for credit, our credit bearing. So in certain cases, some schools and some people are trying to create either one or two micro-credentials that someone who had both of those micro-credentials could trade them in for a single credit in a post-grad certificate program, for example. So it also happens to be a way to get people in to other bigger programs at the college. Someone might initially think, hey, I'm just going to take this micro-credential, but then realize, wow, I really like that. And I want to learn more about this stuff now. I'm going to register for this post-grad certificate program, but I want to get a little bit of credit for these micro-credentials that I just took. So because I took these two micro-credentials, they will count this towards one credit in a post-grad certificate program. And now I only need to take 7 more credits, that sort of thing. Again, it's all about, we always want to fall back to this idea that they're very personalized and flexible for the user, for the student in this case. It's almost like the student saying, I only want to learn about what I want to learn about. Yes, okay, there are degrees and diplomas out there, but there's so much within a degree and a diploma that might not be relevant to what I'm trying to learn about or what my employer wants me to know, or just in terms of, for me personally, what I want to learn about. So again, it's just an alternative way to recognize learning that people are doing. Like so many people probably have a lot of skills and knowledge, but no degree or diploma to verify that. Okay. So anyway,
hi, Todd. This is
Hi.
Isabella.
Hi, Isabella.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Hope you're doing well
Thanks
too.
for this session.
Oh, you're
I'm
welcome.
really interested in this because I do have Microsoft badges for a
Right.
while now.
So you're certified.
And yeah, and I do deliver Microsoft courses, so I do believe that it really should be part of any course we deliver, so students can, you know, show their employable skills.
Right. No, that's awesome.
But a few things, and I have a bit of a list of things here. When it comes to Seneca's, you know, professional development profile, I have several badges through Seneca. I don't see them as badges. You know, when I log in, and so, I mean, is there a place where or is this in development where we can see them as badges? In eCampus, I have them uploaded.
Right. eCampus Passport.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where they're stored, is in
Yeah,
eCampus
but
Passport.
in Seneca, there is no storage for a badge.
That is correct. So you have to use
Yes.
the external storage warehouse
Yeah.
where your
Yeah.
digital backpack and digital locker would be.
Yeah. The other thing is that I find from eCampus to share it to LinkedIn, you don't see it as a badge in LinkedIn.
Okay. So it is possible, yes, to make sure that that badge gets from eCampus Ontario onto
Yeah.
your LinkedIn account.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've done that, but I don't see it as a badge in the LinkedIn profile.
You see it as a link or just words in a link? I don't know.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And
so
even the Microsoft ones that I've tried to add, I find that in LinkedIn, it's a bit of an issue to see it as a badge.
I definitely can't comment on that because I'm not an expertise, but if you definitely wanted to reach out to me,
Okay.
I can get all the answers to those questions for you.
Okay,
Like
thank you.
how to make sure your badge appears on LinkedIn. I can
Yeah.
get the answers to those things.
Thank you.
You're
The
welcome.
other thing is, maybe, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but maybe some people that are attending might want to know the steps. You know, you receive the badge, you download it, you upload it
We're
to
gonna get to that.
campus. Yeah, okay, sorry.
That's okay. No, thank
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that's the process.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the feedback.
Now in eCampus, can you add your other badges, like Microsoft badges? I couldn't. Is it possible? Do you know?
That I'm not sure about. I'm going to
Oh,
guess
okay.
no. I'm going to guess they don't have a relationship with eCampus
Yeah.
Ontario like the colleges do in Ontario.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Mhm.
I'm going to guess no.
Sorry, I've taken over a bit here.
No, I said
But
anyone
one
can.
last comment. I was in a meeting last week with an organization that's called TOSA, that's connecting with McGraw-Hill to deliver these badges. So, for example, if you wanted to take a test, if you will, on Excel, it's not a pass-fail, but they would put you at a level of beginner, intermediate, or advanced, and you would get a badge for that.
Interesting. So I guess it would
So,
depend who's quality assuring that badge and how valuable that would be for someone. Like, realistically, I can make up just a badge icon, throw it on
yeah,
my resume. It's when you click on that badge and get the
yeah,
information and see that, oh, Seneca College is associated with this badge. So
yeah,
they're awarding this badge. That's what
yeah.
I guess gives it its
Yeah, I'm
muscle,
just
I guess,
letting
right?
you know that there's organizations now connecting with publishers to
Oh
do
God,
this.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I can get
Yeah.
a badge playing Fortnite with my son. I can
Yeah,
earn badges. So I mean,
yeah.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt.
no problem. I appreciate
I'll
everything you
let you know
just
what it
added.
is. I'll send you
Okay,
the link to them,
thank you.
Arushi.
Okay, just moving forward, I do want to take a break in a few minutes. So I'm just trying to get through here the kind of what are digital badges, how do they look? Here's a series of micro-credentials that are all under kind of the umbrella of one thing. A series of 9 micro-credentials were developed all through the film and television industry, working very closely with the film and television industry to see what skills that film and television production was requiring or wanting from people, or where they were lacking skills and competencies, where they saw gaps in skills and competencies. So it's a huge process to develop even a single micro-credential, because it's really all about a needs analysis and where are the gaps in industry and where are employees falling short when it comes to what they're able to do on the job. But anyway, this whole entire series of micro-credentials was developed. And basically anyone who takes all of the micro-credentials on the left side of the screen ends up getting a bigger credential, basically kind of saying you're now a bit of an expert on the production side of things. And anyone who gets the 4 micro-credentials on the right-hand side is kind of seen now as a post-production bit of an expert, has a lot of skills on the post-production side of film and television. So John, I see that you have a question that might be relevant to the screen here. Are you saying how would an employee know that someone had all 5 of those micro-credentials on the left side of the screen?
I just turning on my mic.
Yeah,
Todd,
that's
thank
awesome.
you. So I'm curious. So if I'm an employer and I'm looking at a range of candidates and they each are presenting a different number of micro skills or credentials, how do I know how many total badges might be available in a category, and then compare one candidate to the next? How many?
Well, I guess you don't, right? You're just looking for what skill set are you bringing to the table here? And if you're looking for someone just looking at the screen right now, who's able to prep all of the gear for a film or television production, if that's the skills you're looking for, then hopefully you're going to see the person with the gear prep assistant badge has those skills now.
Okay, I see. So it's a different way of considering. It's not about looking for completion in a category. It's about what they possess.
Well, some employers might need a broad spectrum of skills, right? So I guess then the more of those badges you can show them, the better, I guess. And that's just it. This is up to the individual learner to say, you know what? I just went to apply for a job in the film and television world, and they wouldn't hire me because I'm too specialized. I can only prep gear. They're looking for people who, can also be a grip, or who also can help with sound, the production of sound, who knows about, I'm looking for people with very broader skill set than just a very specialized skill set.
Okay, thanks.
Right. And as an individual student, that's up to you to know, oh, I'm working right now. I'm going to lose my job if I don't upgrade my skills. So I'm going to go back and just take, maybe I already am a gear prep assistant, but I also now want to become a junior production sound assistant and an assistant grip so that I can offer those skills to the set on any production. Okay, so we can see here, there's kind of that macro badge that I like to call it. We call them milestone badges at Seneca. All milestone badges look at that badge at the bottom there. Again, there's this is this series of micro-credentials that I was mentioning that were created in specific response to the auto industry's woes over the last few years. So people could come back and take one of these micro-credentials, two of these micro-credentials, three of them, four of them, or all five of them. But someone who took all five of them would get that milestone badge, which we can see located at the bottom there. So there is an advantage to taking more micro-credentials. Obviously, there's an advantage. You've just increased your skill set by taking more micro-credentials. The common thread that I'm seeing here is that schools, employers, and employees representatives would all have to be talking the same language and regularly communicating to update this list of micro-credentials, what each one covers. Absolutely. It's a big back and forth. Even the development of a single micro-credential, I'm pretty amazed by the back and forthness. We talk to industry, we get an idea. Experts at Seneca start developing the course. Let's send it on over back to the industry contact to see what they think about all of this. They'll send their input back over. We'll tweak things on our end. We'll go back to industry and we'll say, what do you want us, what should we use as our final task here? Tell me what someone in the job role at your place of employment, what are they going to be doing on a daily basis? We'll build a final task or performance-based task around that. And then so the students in our class can demonstrate that they're able to do that at the end of this micro-credential. Okay, there's a nice example of a milestone badge. We are pretty proud at Seneca of the branding that's going on with not only our digital badges, but also the milestone badges. And yeah, so there's a nice series of 5 micro-credentials. Someone had asked for this earlier. Here's basically the process of how it works. Yeah, I like all the icons too. That's kind of my favorite thing. So what kind of icons can I create for, because I don't know tons about all of the content per se. I'm not a content expert across all the micro-credentials that I work with. I let the content experts develop the course and just make sure they're developing it under the framework of what a micro-credential is. But student finishes a course, they apply to the course facilitator. They say, I've done the course, professor, I've done the course. I've completed all the work you wanted me to complete. I've uploaded it to your classroom, your virtual classroom, or I've handed it into you if it's a real classroom. Please take a look at it and then let me know if I've earned the badge. Course facilitator, professor looks at the student work, decides whether or not the course professor has 3 options, basically, when someone's applying for that badge. The course facilitator can say, yes, awesome work. You've done a great job. You've demonstrated the skills I wanted you to demonstrate. I'm going to award you your badge. The course facilitator can say, it's not quite there. I need you to go back and take a look at some things and fix this up and do this. Maybe go back and reread chapter 1 of this textbook or whatever, and then resubmit your final task. Or course facilitator can say, no, you definitely don't have, you've demonstrated none of the skills that I've needed you to require, so you're not getting the badge. If course facilitator does award the badge to the student then has one last step to do, which is to claim the badge, which again is all set up in external websites and a lot of mechanisms in the background making that happen. But student clicks on some links, has to sign in, they have their own password, all that stuff, where they get to go claim their badge and store it in their digital locker or digital backpack, and then they can display their badge anytime they want and share it. Okay, so there's kind of the process from a student perspective. Okay, we can kind of get an idea of what Seneca's done so far there. 301 total badges have been issued to students. That would all be within the last 5 or 6 months. And 13 different badges have been offered, as well as 3 milestone badges. And I think this makes a great time, yes, to take a bit of a break. Let's keep it to, if we come back at 10:50, then we're going to create our own little micro-credential with a working template. I'm going to ask maybe Arushi can one step ahead of me. Yeah, there's a little file to download there. You should be able to have access to that. Please let me know if it's not working for you. But as soon as you open that file, make sure you download it to whatever computer that you're on. There's a little download in the top right-hand corner so that you have your own file on your computer that you can be filling in as we go through the rest of this presentation, because that's something you're going to have to upload later to claim your very first digital badge, or maybe not first digital badge, but to claim a digital badge. This is going to be your demonstration of some skills that you have acquired. All right, 10:50. Let's we'll try to stick to those tight timelines, because then it should take us about a half hour for the last little thing we're going to do. Okay, appreciate everyone's time. Apologize for the lot of information and maybe just having to listen to me talk, but great questions. See you soon. Are you still in here, Arushi?
Hi, still here.
Oh. Thanks for posting that link.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, I guess maybe one thing you could do is kind of fill in your own and just tell me if that's something that is
Yeah.
effective. So that way I know whether to do this again. If I mean, it's probably too late for this afternoon. I'm not going to try to change it, but
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to.
just kind of let me know if that helps you. If this really, what I want is this process to be able to help people to have a better understanding of what a micro credential is. So if that does that for you, then
I'll be working away.
okay.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you. All right, I'm back. It's 10:50 on my watch. Hope everyone is back. I don't know if there's any way to throw a thumbs up in the chat box or quickly turn your mic on and say, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. See a few thumbs up there too. Okay. So for our last bit, and I guess, this is the part that as part of, as part of your earning of your own micro-credential today, I think that you need to provide some evidence from each of the 2 sessions that you attend today. So here's the 4 things we're going to do. You guys are going to create, basically you're going to do what I do with anyone that I'm working with when they want to create a micro-credential. Now, I do not do it in 30 minutes, but you are going to do it in 30 minutes. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to brainstorm a skill set that you think you would like to build a short course around. What are those skills? Okay. And this is always a challenge when I'm working with people on micro-credentials. It might not seem like a challenge at the moment, but is real because, and it just, everyone's used to working with learning outcomes for the courses that they create. And so there's a bit of a shift needed when we're trying to build skills or competencies that we're building a course around. So again, when we're thinking, we want to be able to think skills and competencies and remembering that the person's going to have to provide evidence of doing these things at some point. So those are the things that we want to build a micro-credential around. Is what are the skills that industry is craving for? What are the skills that we're building this course around? So you might have an idea already in your head. You're like, ooh, it'd be pretty cool to run a micro-credential in this. Or it'd be pretty cool to run a micro-credential around this topic. You might have some ideas, or you might be sitting there right now thinking, ooh, I have no idea what I'd want to build a micro-credential around. That's okay, because I've given a sample topic as well. Okay. Here's an example of what you are going to create in a minute. I've just made up, and obviously, well, I shouldn't even say obviously for any culinary experts out there, this might be a very valued skill set, but I've built a micro-credential called the Essentials of Cake Baking. You're going to have to come up with your own title for your micro-credential that you're about to develop, and a list very similar to what I have here. So by the time you're done, you'll have the recipient of this micro-credential has demonstrated the ability to, and then you get to list your list of skills. Thanks, Arushi. So you can see, and again, it's kind of a little trivial. I understand that, maybe not for everyone, but I really want you to focus on the words that I'm using in here and how you could literally see someone doing these things if you were looking at them through like a room with glass walls. You could actually see someone creating a batter for cake using those ingredients. Another skill this person has to have is to be able to calculate the correct proportions of each of those ingredients, depending on cake size needed. They need to be able to mix and prepare frosting for a cake using one of 2 standard types of frosting, or one of, I guess, a few different standard types of frosting. They need to be able to bake the cake at the appropriate temperature for the appropriate length of time. They need to be able to test the cake's readiness, and they will be able to frost the cake effectively using appropriate tools and techniques. Okay, so those are the things that the person will be able to do after taking this micro-credential. That's not to say that there's not a host of other things that they're going to learn in this micro-credential. Okay, maybe as part of your course, you're also teaching them, about etiquette, food etiquette. I don't know, about theories of cake, about the history of cake making in the world. I don't know. There's all kinds of other things. But from an employer perspective, again, these are the things that the student can now do at the end of the micro-credential. Okay. So don't always think that these are the only things contained in the course. there could be other things that are important to let the student know, or other content or knowledge that they're going to need to know in order to be able to do these things. But these are the things that they will be able to do at the end of the course. Okay, so you have a little spot on your document to go start filling out something for yourself. You will see that you have the opportunity of using your own title for a micro-credential of your choice, or you can use the one I provided there for you, which is, I think, called effective strategies for creating a workshop presentation or something. What would be the skills that you would want someone to be able to do after taking that micro-credential? All right, so just take maybe 5 minutes or so, see what you can come up with. I am here if anyone wants to talk things through, ask questions, share anything as they're working, please do. Isabella, did you catch that, or do you still need me to repeat it?
Sorry about that, Todd.
okay.
Somebody came to my door and I had to give them a check, and
Yeah, no worries.
so I apologize.
Not a problem.
Can you
Do you-
just repeat what everybody's working on so I can join in?
Yeah, have you opened up that document that was posted
Yes,
earlier?
I have
the
it
working
open. Yes.
Okay,
yes,
so you're
thank you.
basically going to create a micro-credential. Maybe you have an idea
Okay.
percolating in your brain from the past, or maybe it's something that
Okay.
just sparked in your head today. You're going to fill in the first two little
Oh, the
sections.
skills and competencies?
Right.
Is
And
that-
there's an example on the board right now for a
Yes,
fictitious,
yeah,
for a
okay.
fictitious micro-credential, but
Okay.
come up with a title for your micro-credential
Mhm.
and let me know what skills, competencies a learner would acquire through taking your micro-credential.
Okay. So downloading that.
Right. Download it so that you have your own
Yeah,
copy of that on
okay,
your computer.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Life happens.
Yeah. RSP day.
I am going to ask people to share, and you don't have to share the whole thing. It may just be your title and maybe one of the skills or competencies you listed in there. No one's evaluating this work. I'm just curious. We're all just curious to hear what people are thinking about. Lots of great things coming through. In terms of the topics or titles for the micro-credential. Just while people are kind of still working and typing there, scope becomes a big issue in that initial development and thinking about micro-credentials, because often what happens is people have wonderful ideas, but they're pretty broad. And when we really start thinking about things, they realize, wow, I have enough stuff in here that I could fill 100 hours worth of course content with. So those are great times when we start thinking about, okay, how could we break this maybe then into 2 or 3 micro-credentials or 3 or 4 micro-credentials? How can we start separating the things so that there's a natural separation between the content, and there'd be value in each of those micro-credentials for someone who wanted to take them, even if they only wanted to take one of them. And because I'm not an expert at any of this stuff, that's always a little hard for me. So I get to really dig deep with people and probe with lots of questions. You know, so just as an example, I'm looking at balance sheet basics. I don't really know what goes into creating a balance sheet. So until we start looking at what are all the skills in there, and we realize, whoa, there's like about 40 skills that you'd want to be able to teach someone so that they are pretty good with a balance sheet. So maybe we need, and just as was mentioned here, maybe we need a basics of balance sheets and we need an advanced balance sheets. Maybe something like that ends up popping out of the discussion. And there could be people that already have all of those skills from the basics and don't need to take that micro-credential. They're just going to jump right into the advanced balance sheet. Medication administration. Yeah. And you can kind of see like a micro-credential is just, it's just that much more focused, right, than a course. And there's no, like, it can't be too small. If there are skills out there that are valued by employers, it doesn't matter if there's just 2 or 3 skills in there and the course is only 6 hours long. If that's going to make someone employable, be able to say, look, I can now administer medication to a patient through the whatever the different strategies are for administering medication, that's what's important. Great language too, I'm noticing in everyone. You can come build micro-credentials with me anytime, any of you. Lots of great verbs and action words. Something to keep in mind, and I probably maybe should have said this at the beginning, but just when you're creating that list of skills and competencies, remember that someone's going to have to be able to demonstrate those later. So again, these are only things that I bring up when I'm working with other people. Verbs like be able to review a payroll register. How would someone demonstrate that they can review a payroll register? And we don't need to answer that question, but that's the sort of thing that would jump out at me. And I'm like, how do they demonstrate that? So maybe that's not the perfect way, unless there is a really good way that they would demonstrate that they can review a payroll register. Identify. How is someone going to demonstrate that they can identify things, you know, without it being a multiple choice test or something like that? Oh, so that's funny that you just said that, Andrea. And it's okay. This is the first draft, right? So you have lots of other understanding is a word that everyone puts into all of their learning outcomes. And that's totally fine. For a micro-credential, it's really one of the words that we immediately remove from. And I would just throw it back at you, Andrea. Again, you said this one. I would just throw back at you. How would someone demonstrate understanding of an accounting equation? However they would demonstrate that to you, that's what I would ask you to replace there with the skill. So if you were to say to me, for example, someone could demonstrate understanding of an accounting equation by inputting variables into a spreadsheet and populating those cells with appropriate values, that becomes the skill.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that was just an example. I don't even know what it means to make an accounting equation. So, all right. So thank you for sharing that, everyone. We're going to move on to the next little. Okay. So I'm just going to ask you again. Some of you may have just chose the fictional micro-credential around creating an effective virtual workshop presentation. Totally fine. So this may be a little more challenging for you, but if you're actually thinking about actual things or micro-credentials that you have some expertise around, then this might be a little easier for you. I'm going to ask you to consider some industry contacts that could potentially be partners and endorse your ideas and contribute to your ideas. Okay, so, right, we want to ultimately remember that the value of a micro-credential is only as much or is only as great as it is valued by industry and employers. Okay, you might really think you've created a wonderful micro-credential with amazing content in it and great skills. But if employers don't think that, too bad. Okay, if that kind of makes sense. So really be considering that. The level of involvement from industry can be relatively small. I've worked with industry partners who they just want to see the course once it's been created, and they just want to be able to sign off on it basically and say, yeah, I've taken a look at your course. I love the ideas. Yes, I would hire people that had these skills. Okay, but I've also worked with industry where they're very hands-on. They want a big say in helping to develop what those core skills should be, and they want a hand in creating the final task that you're going to use to evaluate the students. I've also worked with industry partners that want to even help evaluate that final task and be able to say, yeah, this student has those skills. Or okay. And remember, again, learners are trying to increase their occupational currency with this digital badge. Okay, so if we go to that, back to that worksheet, we can. Here's an example of mine for my essentials of cake baking. I've listed a few industry partners that I've worked with in the past, maybe that I have a connection to, that maybe I used to work in this industry, so I still have some connections. Maybe they're part of your PAC committee. Did I use the right terminology there? Is it a PAC? Can someone help me out here? Does that make sense? There's like committees that people sit down with that are, but anyway, there's my industry connections and the level of kind of commitment or involvement that they have provided, which I obviously just made that stuff up. Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. If you, obviously you don't know what level they'd want to be. So it's hard for you to list what level they'd be involved at unless you really do have some strong connections already to these industries. So mostly you can just list them here, but if you had a sense of how involved they would want to get because you work with them regularly, then please feel free to add that. We tend to stay away from other academic schools when it comes to, they're not really industry partners. I know in this case, I did list a culinary arts school in Ontario, but if you see, they really helped in the design of the final task more than anything else. Basically reached out to them to say, I have some students, they're learning how to bake cakes. what should they be able to do to demonstrate that they are good cake bakers. So. What do you mean by that exactly? Is it Kajag? Did I say that correctly?
Sorry, yes. So my question is, I'm designing a course in mindfulness and teaching. So thinking about industry, I mean, I can only think about academics.
Right, I see what you're saying. Yes, so that makes sense. So yeah, you would, I guess, be reaching out to other institutions and seeing, you know, what sort of skills would you like to see from your teaching staff around,
Yes.
right, around mindfulness. That's right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yep. So I guess in your case, it would be, they are the employers. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
John, right now it's kind of up to each individual school. Sometimes it starts just with individual faculty, professors, instructors like yourselves. Other times it's a dean that's kind of gung-ho to get started. Other times it could be a chair within a school. So really it's coming from everywhere. And I don't know if Seneca is necessarily looking to have micro-credentials established within all courses. Yes, Isabella, those definitely seem like those would be amazing partners to have on board for the, is that, what was that, the balance sheet idea?
Yeah, it's the Ceridian Power Pay practicum.
That was the name of the micro-credential? Right.
Well, it's Ceridian Power Pay.
Yeah.
Payroll using Ceridian Power Pay.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, those seem like good. Again, like I said, the subject matter experts are the one who get to decide all that because I really know nothing about any of that content.
Yeah, I deliver this course for the Payroll Association at Seneca.
Right.
Yeah, it's the only college that offers this.
That's cool. So,
yeah.
So you'd have to decide if this is something that might lend itself more to a micro-credential than how it's currently being run.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry to.
No, that's great. That's awesome. I recognize the names in that list. So that's they seem like they have some clout in the industry. Okay, so everyone's hopefully thought about a little bit about industry partners. The next phase in developing your own micro-credential is kind of creating what's the final task, what's the final performance-based task going to be that students are going to have to complete to show that they've mastered the skills that you've already listed. Okay, so we definitely stay away from things like essays, tests, multiple choice items when it comes to assessing whether or not the student's going to earn the micro-credential. We're trying to develop a task that we could use, a performance-based task that would let us see, yes, the student has definitely added these new skills to their repertoire. Okay. And again, that's not to say that you can't have tests, other tests and stuff in your micro-credential course. Those are just used for students to almost self-assess themselves. I guess what we'd call assessment for learning, little check-ins to see if they're understanding the material. All that kind of stuff can definitely still be done within your course. How the students do on those things, though, has no bearing on whether or not they earn the micro-credential. Okay, they're learning those other little assessments and tests and multiple choice quizzes that you provide. They're just using those to help them learn and see how they're doing. Okay. Ultimately, the micro-credential or the digital badge gets awarded based upon successful or satisfactory completion of a performance-based task. Okay, so if you want to head over to your worksheet, input a little bit about what the description for your task would be. Here's the task I created for my cake baking micro-credential. It's listed kind of near the bottom. The top is all my skills repeated. By providing evidence of the ability to, there's the task I'm going to get them to do. By providing evidence of the ability to, take an ingredient list with no measurements provided and bake 2 cakes using 2 different size cake pans. After baking each cake, the learner will prepare 2 different frostings of their choice and frost each cake with a different frosting. So you can kind of see my micro-credential getting built. It now has 3 things in the micro-credential. It's got the list of skills and competencies. It's got the final task that the student is going to do to demonstrate those skills. And it's got our endorsers there on it. These are all the things that anyone who clicks on the micro-credential or on the digital badge is going to see. So you should be into section 3 of your little working template there. Give you a few more minutes to think about what a nice final task might look like that a student could do in order to demonstrate that list of skills that you outlined in step 1. Just as I keep reading through the chat box here, there's some very awesome and yet interesting things. I have no idea what prism neutralization is. That sounds pretty cool though. Sounds very technical too. Oh, this is for optical work, I guess, the prism. Yeah, just looking a little bit through some of the examples that people are posting of their final task. And again, I'm definitely not meaning to be picky here or anything. I'm looking, I guess there was one, someone's used the topic that I provided by providing evidence of the ability to create a PowerPoint presentation on their topic, yeah, using text and images. Once completed, the learner will present, right? So that sounds good. You might want to say, even just add in there who the audience is going to be for that presentation. Like that might be their final task, right? They're given an audience that they have to prepare a presentation for. And each student could get a different audience that they're preparing a presentation for as well. So can just by changing the audience that they're preparing a presentation for can add a lot to a task. We got some risk analysis going on here. Case studies are very popular, yes, for certain certain topics of micro-credentials, because we definitely understand that depending on the content of the course you're running, it might be hard, like for students to like physically demonstrate things like with their hands, for example, right? So case studies are very good to show that you can demonstrate certain things. Amazing, amazing stuff. All right. The last thing we're going to have to fill into that, let's try to get this done in a couple of minutes so we can maybe go a few minutes early, is the last thing that a micro-credential needs, believe it or not, is a reflective piece. So every micro-credential that runs needs some sort of a reflective piece in order for the student to earn the micro-credential. It's kind of forcing that metacognition onto a student. Think about what are the skills you've learned? What are the challenges you may have encountered in learning these skills? How are these skills going to help you moving forward? Those sorts of things. And there's generally lots of ways we can get students to reflect upon their learning in a course. These are just a few examples up here. I've seen instructors use journals, daily journals, weekly journals, where they're given prompts, sometimes not even with prompts. Maybe a reflective essay. If you think you have a good question that's going to force students to really think of the learning. I've seen mock interviews. Those work awesome, where a student is asked to record themselves, either audio or video of themselves answering fairly typical interview questions that are used in the industry. We can see what my reflection piece was. I put it at the end here for my essentials of cake baking. I got the students in this micro-credential to prepare a recorded mock interview response to the following question. What skills do you possess that make you an ideal candidate for the job? And tell us about situations where you've had to use these skills. Very typical interview question. You know, that's that question that you're always asked. What makes you the ideal candidate for this job, basically? And it really forces the students to think about the skills they've acquired in this micro-credential and how they're going to help them. And by the time you have finished with your reflection piece, whatever it is, you've now created a micro-credential. So when someone clicks on a digital badge, if they clicked on the digital badge essentials of cake baking, there's what they would see on the screen right now. It's got the skills competencies. It's got the task that was used to assess the skills competencies. It's got the reflection piece, how the students reflected, and it's got our industry partners or endorsers. Ooh, a home barista micro-credential. That would be sweet. I'd have all the neighbors over here every day. If I wore that badge on my jacket. All right, so.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I genuinely don't know what to put here.
For your reflection?
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is what the students are going to reflect on, right?
right. Or this is the way they're going to demonstrate that they've reflected on things. So you can just steal one of the things from the page here. Maybe you're going to get them to journal. Again, it depends on the topic too of your micro-credential. Maybe you're going to get them to journal or write a reflective essay or perform some sort of a mock interview at the end of the course.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Again, depending on how connected or how close you are to the micro-credential that you're creating, you might already have some other ways that you currently get students to reflect on things of this nature. And you're going to use one of those strategies, but. Right. I always like to think about them. These are almost like the things that people are asked when they go in job interviews. Like everyone's asked, what challenge have you experienced in your role as a leader? And how did you solve that challenge? You know, what conflict resolution skills do you have in this area? And how have you resolved conflict in the past? Yeah, great. Just reading what Hussam wrote there. Looks awesome. I see a reflective essay. Again, I would be really careful. I would be careful about putting that 1,000-word part on there. That's just me, but because I think someone can be very reflective in less words, depending on, you know, how eloquent they are. I would hate just to ask someone to keep writing just for the sake of keeping writing. Awesome. Lots of great stuff here. All right. So that does pretty much bring us to the end. I know there's still a few minutes left, but that document that you now have, there will be an opportunity for you to upload it later into a place where you will get a digital badge at the end of today after your second session this afternoon. I don't know exactly what the title is on that digital badge, but I don't know if you've seen that link already, if you've seen it somewhere where you can click on it. So have fun with that. And I want to thank everyone for coming today. You asked some amazing questions. And I could really feel the wheels spinning in some people's brains, which is awesome. And really my goal at the end of all this was, now I'm just hoping that if you ever do sit down and with someone, or with a chair, with a dean, with other people in your faculty, sit down to start thinking about maybe delivering or creating or developing a micro-credential, you now have a little bit of insight into the entire process. So should you have any further questions, please feel free to contact me there. There's my email at the bottom. And thanks again, everyone, for coming. Have an awesome afternoon as well.
Thank you. Can I just, Todd, are you still?
I am still here. I'll stick around for a while.
Okay. I just wanted to post something in the chat, and if you could have a look at it and see if this would be too broad or it would be something that could work.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
It's there.
That's, are you Andrea?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Oh. So this is what you're using as the final task?
Yes, the reflective piece.
Oh, the reflective piece. So for their reflection, you want them to prepare an Excel document?
Yes. Or it doesn't have to be Excel. I guess it could be Word. It's just that Excel is easier, but like prepare a document then, so I would remove the Excel. They can prepare it in whatever format they want.
Okay, so this almost seems to me like something they would be doing to demonstrate that they've acquired the skills that you wanted in this course now.
Okay.
Making a list of the
Okay.
most. Does that kind of make sense?
Okay, so, okay.
I don't know. You can explain to me if I'm misinterpreting this.
No, absolutely. You're right. So I still
That could be
haven't gotten.
that could be part of your final task, right? That
Okay.
might be part of the final assignment that they have to do to earn the micro-credential, to show that they've mastered the skills. I don't know,
Oh.
without looking at your skills at the same time. Just more a way for
That
them
means-
to, more of a way for them to think about what they've learned, any challenges they may have encountered along the way, and how these new skills are how they can use these new skills, or how they might benefit them moving forward in their lives, I guess.
Okay.
That's generally what the reflection is for.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So it is past 11:30. I will sit here with this open. Feel free to stick on it, but definitely don't feel like you need to stay on here. It's your lunchtime. I know your lunchtime is valuable, especially after reading that person's mindfulness micro-credential. Everyone needs to take time for themselves. So please go do that. Feel free to send me an email anytime.